The Dio documentary, Dreamers Never Die, is coming out on physical media, but is it any good? I'm going to tell you the things I love about this documentary. I'll also tell you the things I don't like quite so much. And I'm going to tell you the most surprising thing that I learned. The first thing to say about Dreamers Never Die is it genuinely seems to have been made by two filmmakers who really love their subject. I mean, you have to. I think they spent about 3 or 4 years putting the whole thing together. And Wendy Dio, who is, by the way, Ronnie's widow and manager, eventually gave them access to the entire Dio archive. There's so much attention to detail in the documentary, not just in terms of what is covered in it, but just the little visual details and lots of pictures.
I started as a trumpet player when I was 5 years old.
Oh, so you've been very musical. Where was that?
Upstate New York, a town called Cortland, New York, which is right in the middle of nowhere, dairy farming community, 18,000 people. It was a great place to grow up because you got good moral attitudes. You grew up well.
It really does feel like a labour of love. Another thing I love about the documentary is that it's very honest. It's not a puff piece.
Ronnie was a wonderful, sweet, loving, giving person, but he was a perfectionist. He had dreams and he was going to fulfill them. And if you weren't up to his standard, you wouldn't get it.
It's not trying to say that Ronnie James Dio was an absolute saint. In fact, one of the things we learn about his teenage years is that he once mooned a nun.
One time we were riding in the car, and there was a nun walking down the street, and Ronnie stuck his ass out the window and he mooned her.
If anyone else had done a similar thing, mooning a nun from a passing car, they would have dined out on it, a bit like Ozzy with a certain bat. The fact that we're hearing this story for the first time, sadly 13 years after Ronnie passed away, I think that says quite a lot, doesn't it, about the man? Wendy Dio is also very honest about the rocky road that their relationship went on. She and Ronnie were both kind of control freaks. Who clashed on that basis, but also had such a great bond that just really endured.
Any relationship has ups and downs, and we have many ups and downs, but we were always a team. I had his back, he had my back. So we were going to fight to the end together.
And this documentary inevitably does have a sad end. I could say that's something I don't like about it, but that would be kind of railing against reality, wouldn't it? How else is the documentary supposed to end, really? There's a piece in the documentary about the Hearing Aid project that Ronnie spearheaded to fight famine in Africa. And of course, he and about 1 million other musos created the Stars single. There's clips from those sessions in the recording studio, and Ronnie very much comes across as the benevolent dictator, kind of like a Godfather character, really.
Nice job. Proud of you.
People are visibly scared of him. Don Dokken, in the interviews, admits as much.
I'm playing with Ronnie James Dio.
There's also a classic moment when Ronnie tells Rob Halford that he could do his line a lot better.
You can do it better than it.
Yeah.
And Rob visibly gulps. It's easy to think that Ronnie and Rob would have felt like peers at the time, but Ronnie had been going for a couple of decades longer than Rob, really, what with Elf and Rainbow and Black Sabbath. Halford did look up to him as an elder of rock. There are some great talking heads in this documentary. You got Sebastian Bach, Jack Black, Rob Halford, Roger Glover, Glenn Hughes, Lita Ford, and they all have so much love and affection for Ronnie. There's one interviewee missing, in my opinion, though, and I'll get to that in a bit. There are some really funny moments in the documentary, plenty of funny moments, in fact, and while Ronnie often came across as quite po-faced and serious, we kind of learned that he was anything but most of the time.
He is the best. I told him to say that.
There's a really funny interview he does about the whole satanic panic in the 80s, and Ronnie does this. And when the interviewer asks what he meant by that, Ronnie says,
"Oh, I just cursed you and you're going to die in hell."
What a lovely moment that is. Oh, and by the way, the whole origin of the devil horn sign is explored in the documentary, if you weren't aware of how Ronnie came to incorporate that and why he did. Inevitably, as a fan, there are 2 or 3 or maybe 4 things that I don't like quite so much. A documentary like this, in order to be commercially viable, has to kind of have a mainstream outlook. The subject matter is fairly niche as it is, right? And so the filmmakers have kind of half an eye on getting on, Netflix or whatever, and appealing to a broader audience besides Dio fans. And so with me being a lifelong Dio fan, my ideal Dio documentary would probably be about the making of each Dio album. But I'm not going to get that. And in fact, that's something else that bothers me a little bit. There are key albums in Ronnie's career omitted. Dream Evil hardly even gets a mention.
Well, there's Sacred Heart, and what's the other one? Dream Evil. I don't know. There's another one after that. I don't know.
And the same goes for Dehumanizer, the wonderful 1992 Black Sabbath album. But I can see why the filmmakers have done it. You know, back in the midst of time, there was probably like a 4-hour edit of this documentary, and the Black Sabbath thread of the story that the documentary makers are trying to tell is a lot simpler if you take out the Dehumanizer story point, and it just goes from Ronnie leaving after Live Evil.
I mean, we were all doing quite a bit of nose powder at the time.
Then jumps to him reuniting with Heaven and Hell. That's a simpler storyline, isn't it? And I can kind of see it, but you know, as a fan, it kind of grates not to have albums like that recognised and celebrated. So what's the other thing I'm not so keen on? Well, there's no Vivian Campbell in the Talking Heads, and I think that's a bit of a shame. It seems to have been Wendy Dio's decision. She told me while I was interviewing her for Rock Candy that she didn't want anything to do with Vivian after all the terrible things he'd said about Ronnie, which is understandable, but it doesn't feel quite right for him to not be there. To the documentary's credit, the filmmakers actually do put Vivian's point of view across through archive interviews.
The promise was made to us that by the third album it would be more of an equitable situation.
And so he still gets his point across. Why not just have Vivian today doing it? It might have rebuilt a bridge. I don't know. Maybe too much water has gone under that bridge. But we do get other ex-members of the band aplenty, like Vinny Appice, hooray, Craig Goldie, hooray, and lots of other great musicians from Ronnie's time. No Rowan Robertson, weirdly enough. I don't know why that might be. Oh, I did tell you I was going to share the most surprising thing I learnt during this documentary, and it's the fact that Ronnie and Wendy kind of bet their house essentially on Holy Diver being a success. They kind of remortgaged their house in Tarzana that they had at the time to help fund the recording of Holy Diver, because even though Ronnie had a distribution deal with Warner Brothers, it was only for distribution. There was a whole aspect there of them having to gamble their own house on Holy Diver, which was obviously a pretty safe bet, but they didn't know that at the time.
Huge risk. We didn't know what was going to happen. We actually mortgaged our house to take the first tour out.
Dreamers Never Die is just a really comprehensive 2-hour documentary, which is pretty much exactly what we needed to just catalogue the incredible life and times and music of Ronnie James Dio. I think it's a great documentary, and if you haven't seen it yet, then I would encourage you to grab it by the horns. Pretty soon I'm going to get hold of the deluxe box set of Dio, Dreamers Never Die, and I'm going to unbox it on this channel, so if you'd like to see that, then hit subscribe. And furthermore, subscribe for Satan. Right there, you'll see a handy little playlist of Dio videos I've made for this channel, which you might well enjoy. Thanks for watching, and until the next time then, stay possessed by metal.